Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. We live in a time when there's so much chaos in the world. Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. We live in a time when there's so much chaos in the world. I don't know why this is happening. Okay, let's hope that works. All right, so as I was saying, we live in a time when there is so much of chaos in the world. A time of quarrel, a time of hypocrisy, a time when everyone is out for themselves, power, money, fame. These are the things that we've become accustomed to being the things that that supposedly make people great, that make people famous, that make people desirable, that make people the news. So we're following an ancient time, 5,000 years ago, or some would say 7,000 years ago, 5,000 BCE. And this is the time of the Mahabharata. Mahabharata war was a huge battle, like a world war, in which millions and millions of soldiers died. This was not fought amongst the public. It was not fought in the cities. It was fought in a battlefield. And in this, millions and millions of soldiers from all across the world had gathered on different sides, and all of them were killed on both sides. Only a few people survived. Now, if you'd like to know more about the Mahabharata, it's a wonderful book. It's available as a audiobook as well. It's fascinating reading. It is history, the history of Bharat, of India. And it is what is going on as we are reading about the pastimes of Krishna. This battle is going on the sidelines, especially at the stage we've reached now in the narrative. So let's go back to where we were last session, and then I'll bring you up to date with what's going on with the Mahabharata and how the end of war can be such a powerful moment. We hope that day will arrive even on this planet when people stop the fighting, stop the wars, and learn to live in peace. Back to the beginning of the episode that we're on right now. So what we'd heard about last time was there was this guy called Shalva. And Shalva had a UFO-like device that he had been blessed with by Shiva. The Asura Mayadanava had, with his mystical powers, helped construct this spaceship, which was like a city. And this Shalva person had become very arrogant. He was a friend of Shishupal, he was a friend of Rukmi, and both these people had been killed by Krishna. So he had great enmity towards Krishna. And Krishna had killed them because they were, asuras. They were people who were creating havoc on earth, and it was time for them, as Krishna's mission was to rid the earth of the asuras, of the people who were evil and wicked and creating lots of conflict and war and horrible things on earth. So Krishna and Balarama, his brother, had appeared for exactly that purpose, was to annihilate the miscreants and establish the principles of dharma, to establish the ways in which people need to live in this world. Now, Shalva being dead, his friend Dantavakra appeared on the scene. And Dantavakra was in great rage, and he ran in his anger towards Krishna. His friends Shishupal, Shalva, and Paundraka had all been killed by Krishna. Now here he was, alone, on foot and wielding a club in his hand. See, Krishna had killed Shalva in his UFO thing with his Sudarshan Chakra. Krishna was extremely powerful. No one had been able to kill Krishna. And when he did kill Shalva, this is the scene where his Shalva's friend, Dantavakra, comes running towards Krishna to try and kill him. Now, it's foolishness when you see someone is that powerful to just lose your mind, to become angry, and to lash out. You're calling for trouble. But this Dantavakra was not only a friend of Shishupal, but they have a long history going back. We'll tell you about it in just a minute. So here he was running on foot, wielding a club in his hand, and the mighty warrior, as he ran, the earth shook with his footsteps. Seeing Dantavakra approach, Krishna quickly picked up his club, jumped down from his chariot, and stopped his advancing opponent just as the shore holds back the ocean. So I have a question for you. Which is more powerful, the ocean or the shore? The ocean comes lashing at the shore every day, again, again, and again. And the shoreline, stays constant. Right? The ocean goes out, it comes back in. The ocean comes with all its might, and the shore stands still and stationary, unmoved, unaffected. So this beautiful analogy is being used here, that Dantavakra rushed towards Krishna and Krishna stopped his advancement just as the shore holds back the ocean. Raising his club, the reckless king of Karusha, Dantavakra, said to Krishna, what luck to have you come before me today. You are our maternal cousin, Krishna, but you committed violence against my friends, and now you want to kill me also. Therefore, fool, I will kill you with my thunderbolt club. Then, O unintelligent one, I, who am obliged to my friends, will have repaid my debt to them by killing you. So lots of talk, lots of big bravado in Dantavakra's statements. You, Krishna, are my enemy disguised as a relative and are like a disease within my body. He tried to harass Krishna with harsh words, as one might prick an elephant with sharp goads. So goads are what they use to try to, get an elephant to move. Again, trying to bring across the idea of how unmoved Krishna was by this whole display. Dantavakra struck Krishna on the head with his club and roared like a lion. Although hit by Dantavakra's club, Krishna did not budge from his place on the battlefield. Rather, with his massive Kamudaki club, Krishna struck Dantavakra in the middle of his chest. His heart shattered by the club's blow, Dantavakra vomited blood and fell lifeless to the ground, his hair disheveled and his arms and legs sprawling. A most subtle and wondrous spark of light then rose from the Asura's body, entered Krishna, while everyone looked on, just as when Shishupal had died. Now I want to take you back a little bit in time, to the time when Shishupal, the friend of Dantavakra, had also been killed. This was Shishupal, and he had come at the time when King Yudhishthira was about to be inaugurated. And they were all worshipping Krishna as the lead person, as the most important person in the assembly. At that time, Shishupal had become very enraged. Why are you worshipping Krishna? Krishna is a cowherd boy. He's not worthy of even being here. And at that point, Krishna tolerated 100 insults from Shishupal. He had promised Shishupal's mother that he would not harm her son unless he offended him 100 times. And that happened right there in that assembly. Krishna kept quiet, kept listening. When Shishupal had gone on and on and on and on, insulting Krishna, and then he began insulting Draupadi and the Pandavas and all Krishna's loved ones. At that point, Krishna couldn't take it anymore. So he took out his Sudarshan Chakra and with his disc, cut off Shishupal's head. Now, who was this Shishupal and Dantavakra? They were in fact Jai and Vijay from the spiritual world. They had been cursed by the 4 sons of Brahma, young sons of Brahma. They looked young, actually. They were very wise sages, and they had chosen to stay celibate all their life and to stay as little boys. Now, the guards at the doors of Krishna's residence in Vaikuntha didn't know that. They thought, oh, who are these boys trying to get into the spiritual world? They are not allowed here. They didn't know who these boys were. So, because of that, they were cursed, these 2 gatekeepers, Jai and Vijay, and they were cursed to come to earth and take 3 births as asuras. And they had taken birth first time around as Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. We've talked about their stories in the Bhagavatam. Then they came as Prahlad's father. Sorry, that was Hiranyakashipu. Then we had Shishupal and Dantavakra, these 2. And like this, they took birth here and they fought against Krishna. They presented themselves as asuras, as demoniac people, one who hated Krishna. And in that way, Krishna got to do battle with his own guards. And he enjoyed it thoroughly. You see, God enjoys playing. God enjoys sporting. And we don't understand that. We take God too seriously. We think God is just some serious dude who's sitting up there punishing people. No. He enjoys all this lila, these pastimes. So now at this point, when Dantavakra has been killed, his brother Vidurath, immersed in sorrow over his brother's death, came forward breathing heavily, sword and shield in hand, and he wanted to kill Krishna. When Vidurath attacked Krishna, the Supreme Lord used his razor-edged Sudarshan disc to remove his head, complete with its helmet and earrings. So just like, he would just throw his disc, it would do the job. And there are cases, in the case of Paundraka, where he sent his disc off hundreds of miles away. So it's not like he was doing some boomerang thing or something somebody might think. No. The Sudarshan is not like that. The Sudarshan could go millions of miles away and kill someone if required. It could destroy an entire palace, an entire kingdom. It could destroy an entire city. And that's what it did in the case of Paundraka. So, having thus destroyed Shalva and his Shaubhas airship, along with Dantavakra and his younger brother, all of whom were invincible before any other opponent, Supreme Lord Krishna was praised by the Devas, the demigods, human beings, and great sages. Why were they praising him? Because these were the troublemakers among many who had flourished on the earth, just like we have today. So many who are at war, who are creating havoc, who are creating unrest, who are creating disharmony all over the earth. They do not know how to live in peace with each other. So there comes a time they've got to be wiped out. And so that's why the devas, the demigods, the human beings, and the great sages were all praising Krishna, because no one else had been able to defeat them. As they sang his glories and showered him with flowers, the Supreme Lord entered his festively decorated capital city of Dwarka. Thus Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all mystic power and the Lord of the universe, is ever victorious. So this is another thing that these narratives, these histories, these itihas are trying to tell us, that the Supreme Lord is ever victorious. No one can defeat him. He cannot be killed by anyone. He cannot be destroyed by anyone. He cannot be hurt by anyone. Dantavakra came and hit him with his club on his head. Didn't make a difference. Krishna was perfectly okay. And if he does in any way try to act like he's been defeated, like in one case he ran from the battlefield, it was because he didn't want to deal with Jarasandha. He knew the time would come, Jarasandha would bring lots of people to him who could be all wiped out, and then he would kill him. There was a right time for everything. It says in the next line, only those of beastly vision think that Krishna sometimes suffers defeat. Those of beastly vision, meaning who have the vision of an animal, the vision of a beast, of a wild animal. Only they think he sometimes suffers defeat. Now our narrative shifts to Krishna's brother, Balaram. Balaram is no different than Krishna. Balaram is the supreme Godhead, but who comes to assist Krishna. Together, they grew up taking care of the cows, a beautiful relationship, Balaram being the older brother. And now Balaram continues to support Krishna, as he did in the various times when Krishna is incarnated. As when Krishna came as Ram, Balaram came as Lakshman. In the same way, in various incarnations, when he's there as Vishnu, Balaram is there as Shankarshan. I won't go into all that. We've talked about it in the past. But now our story shifts to Balaram. Balaram then decided, when he basically heard that the Kurus were preparing for war with the Pandavas. Now, we've talked about this earlier. There were two factions, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Right? The Pandavas were the good guys. They were all Krishna's friends. Yudhishthir was the leader of the Pandavas, and he had now become the king of Indraprastha, and he was ruling this beautiful kingdom that he'd created. And the Kauravas were his cousins, Yudhishthir's cousins. They were envious, and they were doing everything they could to get the Kauravas out of power. They had cheated them in a game of dice. They had taken away their entire kingdom. They had exiled the Pandavas into the forest. Pandavas had to spend 14 years there. And then when they came back, they had to be 1 year in hiding. I think it was 13 years and then 1 year in hiding. And if they were detected, they'd have to go back again for another 13 years. Those were the conditions in which they had been duped. Again, the story is a long one. It's there in the Mahabharata. I won't go into it here. Now, Krishna had tried a lot to see if there could be a resolution, there could be peace between these two parties. They had both, especially the Kauravas, had refused. And now a great battle called the Mahabharata was starting to happen. And like I said earlier, millions of people died in that battle. At this point, a parallel reality is going on. Balaram heard that the Kauravas were preparing for war with the Pandavas. Balaram, being neutral, departed on the pretext of going to bathe in holy places. Now, in a sense, Balaram actually removed himself from the scene. He knew what Krishna wanted to do. Krishna had appeared to annihilate the miscreants who were on this earth, and all those miscreants were lined behind the Kauravas, the other side, the ones who were opposing the Pandavas. So Krishna was with the Pandavas, and the Kauravas were the ones who had grabbed everything that they could from the Pandavas, left them homeless. So the battle was about to begin, and Balaram decided he was going to stay out of it. Balaram then decided to go on a tour of many holy places. India is full of holy places, beautiful places which have very high spiritual resonance, spiritual power. When you go there, you can actually feel that spiritual power. It's palpable. So the places that he visited were along the river Saraswati. Now, that river doesn't exist anymore. It was there, but they found the riverbed, and it's buried. Along the river Saraswati, the Yamuna, and the Ganga. And then he came to the Naimisharanya forest, where the great sages were performing an elaborate sacrifice. Now, this Naimisharanya forest is none different than the Naimisharanya forest that this Bhagavatam is being spoken in. Recognizing Balaram, the sages greeted him by standing up. bowing down and worshipping him. Now, Balaram was the brother of Krishna. Krishna was a king. Why would the sages stand up and bow down and worship him? Sages are saintly people. In Vedic culture, we bow down before the sages. We bow down before saintly people and worship them. But they stood up, bowed down, and worshipped Balaram. Why? Because they knew who he is. They knew that he is no different than the supreme Godhead incarnate in this world. Balaram accepted a seat of honor and then noticed that Romaharshan, a disciple of Vyas, had remained seated. Vyas is the one who wrote the entire Vedic literature, including the Srimad Bhagavatam. He compiled it. It was already there thousands of years before. But around that period of when Krishna was there, that's when Vyas had begun writing down the entire Vedic literature. So Balaram, seeing this behavior of Romaharshan, became extremely angry. And knowing that Romaharshan was the member of a Sutta caste, which means that he was a Brahmin, I'm not sure, it's a Brahmin mother or father. I think it's usually a Kshatriya father married to a Brahmin lady, something like that. So mixed caste. But being in that position, he was not some highly exalted being, yet he was clearly showing signs of arrogance. He had failed to stand up, he had failed to bow down or join his palms, and normal greeting, namaste, anything, no sign. And he was sitting above all the learned Brahmins, so he was really acting like he was some great guy. Balaram said, because this fool born from an improperly mixed marriage sits above all these Brahmins and even above me, the protector of religion, he deserves to die. Of course, Balaram knew more about Romaharshan than, most people did. Although he is a disciple of the divine sage Vyas and has thoroughly learned many scriptures from him, including the law books of religious duties and the epic histories and Puranas, all this study has not produced good qualities in him. Rather, his study of the scriptures is like an actor studying his part, for he is not self-controlled or humble and vainly presumes himself a scholarly authority, though he has failed to conquer his own mind. It's a very powerful understanding that one who has studied even studied the scriptures, studied them deeply, maybe an authority, but he has failed to control his mind. He has not developed humility. He has not become self-controlled and vainly presumes himself to be a scholarly authority. Such a person is arrogant. Such a person does not deserve to be in a place of honor. Such a person is an impostor. So Balaram continues, the very purpose of my descent into this world is to kill such hypocrites who pretend to be religious. Pretend to be religious. There are lots of them around today. We don't need to go around killing them. If Balaram felt that was what he had to do, that was what he had to do. But I don't think we need to do that. God will take care of them. But his point was very important, that there are hypocrites who pretend to be religious. Very often you'll find them with fancy clothes and garments and have tons of followers and lots of adoration, and people think that, because this person has so many followers, they must truly be great. But no, never get fooled by a person's garments or a person's followers or fame or popularity or whatever. Look for the qualities that Balaram is talking about here. Has the person been able to conquer their mind? Meaning, have they conquered lust, anger, greed? Have they developed humility? Are they self-controlled? If not, then all the study of the scripture means nothing when you haven't actualized it. But if you can take one sentence from the scripture and if you can apply it diligently, take it deeply and make it who you are, you will find massive transformation occurring in your life. And on the other hand, if you've read tons of things but haven't applied anything, it's foolishness. Although Sri Balaram had stopped killing the impious, Ramaharshan's death was inevitable. And so in this scene, you'll notice Ramaharshan then is killed by Balaram with a blade of kusha grass. He just took up a blade of grass, a special kind of grass, kusha grass, and touched Ramaharshan with its tip. All the sages cried out, "Alas, alas," in great distress. They told Balaram. So Ramaharshan was then killed. So all the sages who were present, the rishis, the saintly people, they said, "Oh Master, you have committed an irreligious act. This is not according to dharma. This is irreligious. We gave him the seat of the spiritual master and promised him long life and freedom from physical pain for as long as this sacrifice continues," because there was this big ceremony going on, a sacrifice that was happening. And so they said, "You have unknowingly killed a Brahmin, a priest. Of course, even the injunctions of revealed scripture cannot dictate to you, because Balaram is beyond the scripture. He is beyond all the codes of religion. He is the supreme Godhead. Although they are brothers, he is no different than Krishna." So they say, "You, the Lord of all mystic power, are beyond the injunctions of revealed scripture. But if by your own free will you nonetheless carry out the prescribed..." So he's saying here that even though you are beyond the injunctions of scripture, yet you carry out the prescribed process. And in this case, you need to carry out the prescribed process for the killing of a Brahmin. Brahmins are priests. They are supposed to be very devout, very priestly, very saintly people. In some cases, they're not. So what they say to Balaram is that people in general will greatly benefit by your example. Now, does Balaram already know this? Absolutely. He knows exactly what he was doing and why. So, this personality of Godhead, Sri Balaram said, "I will certainly perform the atonement for this killing, since I wish to show compassion to the people in general. Therefore, prescribe for me whatever ritual is to be done first. O sages, just say the word, and by my mystic power I shall restore everything you promised him: long life, strength, and sensory power." Now, he could have brought Ramaharshan back to life, but that's not his agenda. His agenda was to purge the world of all such people. So the sages said, "Please see to it, O Balaram, that your power and that of your kusha weapon," that was the blade of grass that he used, "as well as our promise and Ramaharshan's death, all remain intact." So Balaram said, "The Vedas instruct us that one's own self takes birth again as one's son. Thus, let Ramaharshan's son become the speaker of the Puranas, of the Vedas, Vedic literatures, and let him be endowed with long life, strong senses, and stamina. So that which they wish to give to the father, that blessing will now be given to the son." And in this way, Balaram resolved the matter. "Please tell me your desire, O best of sages, and I shall certainly fulfill it. And O wise souls, please carefully determine my proper atonement, since I do not know what it might be." The sages said, "A fearsome demon named Balvala comes here every new moon day and contaminates our sacrifice." So they used to have these fire sacrifices. They build a fire, then they do all kinds of mantras and pour ghee into the fire and chant hymns and prayers. So that's the sacrifice they're talking about. Now there is this fearsome demonic entity who comes every new moon day and contaminates the place where they do the sacrifice. They say, "Please kill that sinful demon who pours down pus and blood and feces, stool and urine and wine and meat upon us. This is the best service you can do for us. Thereafter, for 12 months you should circumambulate the land of Bharat or India in a mood of serious meditation, executing austerities and bathing at various holy pilgrimage sites. In this way you will become purified." So Balaram, this is all according to plan. Balaram wanted to be away from the battle of Kurukshetra. He didn't want to get involved. Krishna was taking care of things. So then, on the new moon day, a fierce and frightening wind arose, scattering dust all about, and spreading the smell of pus everywhere. On the sacrificial arena came a downpour of abominable things sent by Balvala, after which the demon himself appeared, trident in hand. The immense demon resembled a mass of black carbon. His top knot and beard were like molten copper. His face had horrible fangs and furrowed eyebrows. Upon seeing him, Balaram thought of his club, which tears to pieces his enemies' armies, and his plow weapon, which punishes the demons. Thus summoned. Now he summoned his weapons, and the weapons appeared. His two weapons appeared before him at once. With the tip of the plow, Balaram caught hold of the demon, Balvala, and he flew through the sky, and with his club Balaram angrily struck that harasser of Brahmins on the head. Now, it would be a very valid question to ask. How is it that there were demons like this then and we do not see them now? Well, I can only answer in this way. They've become very sophisticated. They look like the rest of us, but they behave in the most abominable ways. They are ruthless. They do not care how many people die because of their activities, what impact their actions have. They do not care. They wear suits and ties. They wear sometimes the clothing of a general or a king or a prime minister or a president. Yeah, but they create havoc, and their activities speak of who they are, not their clothes. And besides that, there are many that are unseen, that affect our minds. There are many that are unseen and affect people's hearts, create havoc in their life. So there is all kinds. There is another world, and we don't want to believe it. We don't want to see it. But it is talked about here in the Vedas very clearly. It's not necessarily that these demons were visible to everybody. It's possible they were visible only to a few. I don't know that part. But there are people even in today's time who can see such entities, who can see such beings, and know how to deal with them. But it takes a higher power to deal with them. You cannot deal with them by yourself. Just as much as these great sages and rishis, these saintly people who were deeply immersed in scripture and in all the practices of spirituality and meditation and everything else, they could not deal with this asura. So they requested Balaram. And that is why it is so important for us to be connected with that supreme being, with God. Because in his shelter, by taking shelter of God, we are protected from all such entities, from all such beings. But one must truly surrender. One must truly take shelter of God. And then he protects you. It's a real fact. You will see it for yourself. And how do you know you're protected? Because you will see that your impurities continue to become removed from your heart. Impurities such as anger, lust, greed. You're becoming cleansed of all of that. You're becoming more peaceful. You're becoming more kind. You're becoming more loving. But if on the other hand, you're moving in the opposite direction, more angry, more hateful, more bitter, well, then you know that you are being attacked by such entities. So the symptoms are very clear. Whether you see or you don't see, doesn't matter. The question is, what's controlling you? Are you controlling you? Or is something else controlling you? Are you in charge of your mind, or is something else in charge of your mind? And that something else could be the media, it could be the politicians, it could be all kinds of entities and all kinds of beings. I don't know. We need to look at what does it take. And what I've learned is this, that by ourselves we are not that powerful. Some of these entities can be very, very powerful. But when we take shelter of God, we are definitely protected. Krishna says, I protect my devotees. And you see it again and again and again. These sages, they appeal to Balaram to protect them. And that's exactly what he did. All through the Bhagavatam, you see this, how Krishna is protecting his devotees and his loved ones and those who surrender to him, whether that is Prahlad, the young boy whose father was trying to kill him, whether it was the residents of Vrindavan, whoever. There were so many narratives all through the Bhagavatam, it is there. People have sometimes said, why is it always talking about these demonic entities and these bad people? Well, because it's a reality. Just because people walk around in fancy clothes doesn't mean they don't behave like demonic entities. They absolutely do. Look for yourself. When they are cold-hearted, cruel, they don't care who they have to exploit or what they have to do to get their way. When they abuse others, when they rape others, when they molest others, when they leave them bankrupt, leave them without anything. Yeah, those are demonic people, and they look just like you and me. So it doesn't mean they have to look something weird, but you know a tree by its fruit. You know a person by their actions. So this demonic entity, Balwala, cried out in agony and fell to the ground, his forehead cracked open and gushing blood. He resembled a red mountain struck by a lightning bolt. The exalted sages honored Balaram with sincere prayers and awarded him infallible blessings. Then they performed his ritual bath, just as the devas, the demigods, had formerly bathed Indra when he killed Vritrasura. They gave Balaram a beautiful Vaijanti garland of unfading lotuses. Unfading lotuses means they never die. In which resided Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, in those lotuses. And they also gave him a set of divine garments and jewelry. Then, given leave by the sages, Balaram followed the course of the Saryu until he came to Prayag, where he bathed. Now, this same Prayag is where the recent Mahakumbh took place. So Balaram went there too. And he bathed there. And he performed rituals to appeal to the demigods and devas and other living beings. Next, he went to the ashram of Pulaha Rishi in the southern provinces. So then he traveled from the north, he came down to the south to Dravid Desh, that is in the southern part of India. There, the Supreme Lord saw the sacred Venkata Hill as well as the cities of Kamakkoshani and Kanchi, the exalted Kaveri River, and the most holy Sriranga. There's a Sriranga temple, very, very famous in India, in the south, where Lord Krishna has manifested himself. Then he came to Setu Bandha, also known as Rameshwaram, where this is the point from where Ram crossed over to Lanka to kill the Asura Ravana. So at this place, Rameshwaram, where and there, of course, is a beautiful shivling over there. So that is the place of Ram, where Ram worshipped Shiva. There, in this place, the most grievous of sins are destroyed. So Balaram is behaving like an ordinary human being, going through this to show us as an example that if you happen to harm a Brahmin or a priest or one who is deeply immersed in spiritual practice, then there has to be an atonement. You cannot just try to walk away from that. So he is exhibiting exactly that behavior. There, Balaram gave Brahmins 10,000 cows in charity. He then visited the great Malaya mountains, where he found Agastya Rishi, great sage, sitting in meditation. After bowing down to the sage, the Supreme Lord offered him prayers and then received blessings from him. He then proceeded to the shore of the southern ocean, where he saw goddess Durga in her form of Kanya Kumari. These are all very well-known places in India. If you haven't been there, that's all right. I've just created a little summary. There was a lot more that he visited, a lot more places mentioned. I'm just mentioning the ones that were most significantly known in today's time. He then traveled through the kingdoms of Kerala, visiting Shiva's sacred city of Gokarna, where Shiva directly manifested himself. Balaram then heard from some Brahmins how all the kings involved in the battle between the Kauravas and the Pandavas had been killed. Now, of course, Balaram would have known this, but he waited till such time as he heard from someone. All the kings involved in the battle between the Kauravas and Pandavas. So the kings on both sides and their armies had been killed. From this he concluded that the earth was now relieved of her burden. Wanting to now, what he also discovered was a few people were left. Among them was Duryodhana, the eldest brother of the Kauravas, and Bhima, the greatest warrior amongst the Pandavas. So the two sides, if you remember, Kauravas and Pandavas, right? One person from each side. Both of them were expert with the club. We've been hearing about the club, this weapon. Both of them were extremely powerful warriors. In fact, so powerful that they were equals. So wanting to stop the club fight then raging between Bhima and Duryodhana, right? So these two characters, Balaram went to Kurukshetra. Now this Kurukshetra, as you know, I've been telling you about the battle of Kurukshetra, which is mentioned in the Mahabharata, but this is also the place where the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. And that Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. It was right just before the battle began. And if you don't have a copy, please make sure you get one. It's the most amazing reading that you'll ever do. It answers so many questions. It was the turning point in my life, and it has been the turning point in the lives of so many people. Those are Krishna's instructions to Arjuna. So now, that was the beginning of the battle. We're towards the end of the battle. I think it was 18 days that the battle took place. This is towards the end of that. During this time, Bhima and Duryodhana are fighting, and they are some of the last survivors. Duryodhana is a master with the club, and so is Bhima. When Yudhishthir, their brother, the elder brother of the Pandavas, Krishna, Arjuna, and the twin brothers Nakul and Sahadev saw Balaram, they offered him respectful obeisances and said nothing, thinking, what has he come here to tell us? Balaram found Duryodhana and Bhima with clubs in their hands, each furiously striking for victory over the other as they circled around skillfully. Balaram said to them, King Duryodhana and Bhima, listen, you two warriors are equal in fighting prowess. I know that one of you has greater physical power while the other is better trained in technique. Since you are so evenly matched in fighting prowess, I do not see how either of you can win or lose this duel. Therefore, please stop this useless battle. They did not accept Balaram's request, although it was logical, for their mutual enmity was irrevocable. Each of them constantly remembered the insults and injuries he had suffered from the other. Of course, the injuries, I believe, on the Pandava side were far greater, far greater. They had everything taken away from them. Their wife had been almost disrobed in front of the assembly. They had been banished and made to live in the forest for 14 years in exile. There was far greater. However, Duryodhana was no less. He was holding on to the little things that had happened as well. Anyway, so Balaram tried to bring peace. Just as Krishna had tried to bring peace between these families, Balaram tried his part as well. Because both of them were very fond of him. Both Bhima and Duryodhana were very fond of Balaram. Balaram had been neutral. Krishna had not been so neutral, but Balaram had been very neutral. And therefore he tried to use his influence to try to get them to stop fighting. But both these cousins were hell-bent on fighting. Concluding that the battle was the arrangement of fate, Balaram went back to Dwarka, went back to his capital city. He left the battlefield. And there he was greeted by Ugrasen, the king, and his other relatives, who were all delighted to see him. Now, it's also important to note here that Balaram, while not taking part in this whole arrangement, tried his best to see if there could be some peace, but there was no hope. Eventually, it was Krishna who told Bhima what Duryodhana's weakness was and how to kill him. And so ultimately, Duryodhana was killed by Bhim. And the entire Kaurava family, except for the elders, was all wiped out, including all the people who supported them and all the kings who had come from thousands of miles away. All of them were wiped out. Later, Balaram returned to Naimisharanya, where the sages joyfully engaged him. The embodiment of all sacrifice. Balaram, is the embodiment of all sacrifice. In performing, they engaged him in various kinds of Vedic sacrifice. Balaram then retired from warfare. He decided he was not going to be engaged in any more fights or battles or anything. The time was over. The time that they had come and the things they had come to do were all done. The all-powerful Sri Balaram bestowed upon the sages pure spiritual knowledge. Blessed them with pure spiritual knowledge. Though they were sages, though they were highly saintly people, he blessed them with pure spiritual knowledge by which they could see the whole universe within him and also see him, how he was pervading everything. You see, this is the part that people don't get, how God pervades everything. Recently someone told me about how they were feeling very drained. Their energy was very drained. They felt they were feeling empty inside. They felt like people were just sucking their energy out. And I said, look, no one can take your energy if you don't let them. You may have a phone, right? You have a phone. There are things that drain its energy. There might be certain apps that drain its energy. There might be certain situations that drain its energy. For example, if you don't have a Wi-Fi, you don't have any kind of cellular signal and you're in an airplane and you got your phone on, its battery will get drained. So there are certain situations in which your phone's battery gets drained. Similarly, amongst human beings, there are some places, some people who will take your energy. You have to know, it's your responsibility. You can't just go away and hide in a mountain cave or something. You need to know how to recharge yourself. How do you do that? How do you charge your energy when it is getting depleted by the world? It's not about complaining. It's not about hiding. It's not about fighting either. You need to know how to charge yourself. How do you charge your own battery? It's not just food. The energy of God is what we need. That energy is everywhere. You can plug into it simply by being deeply present. Recognize that He, God, is everywhere and pervades everything. And simply by being present to any aspect of nature, whether that is the earth, plants, the trees, the ground, or water in your shower, or in water that you drink, or water in an ocean or a lake or a river or whatever it might be. Earth, water, fire. It could be fire, it could be the sunshine. Air, which you breathe. Be present to your breath. And you will be able to recharge your batteries through all these elements: earth, water, fire, air, and open spaces. All of these are full of energy. That's why you feel so good when you're on vacation. So when you are there, charge your battery by being fully present. Not in your head, not on your phone, not in conversation with someone, but just being present to nature. That will fill you up. You will also get filled up if you go and meditate on your breath, on a mantra, like Om or the Hare Krishna mantra, or you go to a temple, or you go and you engage in serving Krishna in some way, whether you have a deity at home or at the temple. In so many ways, reading about him will charge you up. Reading the Bhagavad Gita, hearing these talks will charge your energies, because your soul resonates with this, wakes up when it hears these talks. And when it wakes up, the soul energizes you. The energy, you don't have to get it from outside, you can get it from inside. There's outside, there is inside, right? So these sages, they were able to see by Balaram's blessings that the whole universe resides within him. And also they could see him pervading everything. The whole universe resides within him. The same thing was shown by Krishna to Arjuna in the battle of Kurukshetra. before the battle began. When Krishna narrates the Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita itself, Bhagavad Gita means the song of God, Krishna shows himself the Virat Roop, this gigantic form in which the entire universe is present within his body. He shows him past, present, and future within himself. He shows him how everything is within him. People say, how is this possible? Of course it's possible for God. That everything is within, that he is everywhere and everything is within him. He's seated in everyone's heart. So there's three different ways. He's in everything, he's in everyone, and yet he exists as a being. And as a being, also everything is within him. This is his inconceivable potency. So this is what Balaram showed them, that how the whole universe is within him and also how he pervades everything. Pervades meaning he radiates. Think like the sun radiating out, radiating everywhere. In the same way, his energy is going everywhere, is in every atom of the creation. So they were able to see that practically. Many people who've had an enlightenment experience also talk about this. They often don't realize that this is coming from a person, a being, God. But they think, oh, yes, this energy of the universe, this is God. The universe is God. No, here Balaram is having a very different experience. This is coming, rather Balaram is giving them a very different experience, that this is coming from him. The universe is coming from him. Its energy is coming from him. After executing with his wife the Avabhrita ablutions, so this time Balaram had gone with his wife, and the priests were leading them through a ceremony. So this was the Avabhrita ablutions, means the certain bathing ceremony that is done. The beautifully dressed and ornamented Balaram, encircled by his immediate family and other relatives and friends, looked as splendid as the moon, surrounded by its effulgent rays. Countless other such pastimes were performed by the mighty Balaram, the unlimited and immeasurable Supreme Lord, whose mystic yoga maya power makes him appear to be human. It's the same as Krishna. But by their mystical power, yoga maya, this power makes them appear to be human. All the activities of the unlimited Supreme Lord Balaram are amazing. Anyone who regularly remembers them at dawn and dusk will become very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Vishnu. So with that, we'll end today's narrative. There's a beautiful narrative coming up next week, where we're going to talk about Sudama. But I'm going to leave that for next week. I'd love to know your thoughts. If you have any questions, please write them down in the comments or ask them now if you're present. Some of you are here on Instagram, and others are here on Zoom and YouTube. So if you have any questions, please ask. If not, I will see you next week. Hare Krishna. See you next week. And next week, as you remember, we're starting at 5 p.m. Pacific time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern. And I don't remember what that is in India right now, so have you all calculate that. Okay. See you later. Good night. Hare Krishna.